Therapy dudes, take away your stress, put you in a good mood. If you had them over, they would eat up all your food. It's time for therapy dudes.
Hello. Welcome to 2025. This is Dan Fox and Andre Karkamaz, Therapy Dudes. We are proudly sponsored by Boulder Psychological Services. Learn more at boulderpsychologicalservices.com. So welcome, folks. Today, we are going to be looking at New Year's resolutions, the idea of making resolutions, and how to do this in a way that is healthy and sustainable, as well as some of the pitfalls and challenges that people might be experiencing with that process as they get out into the new year. Andre, want to say hello? Give us your initial thoughts.
Hello. I just think about how predictable it is every year that people just flood the gym for like the first month uh, for New Year's and then they just fall off. And I always wonder like, what's going on? Why are people only going in for like a month afterwards? That's all we have? That's it? That's the extent of our willpower. To me, it's just silly. So this year, when I was thinking about doing a New Year's resolution, which I don't usually do because I disappoint myself just like everyone else does, um, I decided to do something that made sense more than like I'm gonna gain a six pack and maybe 2 inches of height and all this stuff that doesn't make sense. But I decided to do something that's tangible and it actually feels more empowering. I'm
Nice.
trying to cut out fast food and sugar, processed sugar. That's it.
Nice. And as just a note to the viewers, we're going to do a part two later on this week that is about Andre and I doing our personal journey into the topic of these resolutions. So we'll get to hear more details about Andre and what he's doing with that, and also the things that we're doing as a resolution kind of in concert with each other in the second podcast later on this week. But I'm with you on that like initial surge, right? There's like a little bit of a willpower boost. The beginning of the year kind of has that energy of like time to make some changes. And there's like these marketers are no dummies. There's a reason why we have all this like, the new diet plans or the new like 24-hour fitness, like sign up for a year. All that marketing happens in the end of December, beginning of January to catch people like us in that like initial surge. And why do you think it is that after 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 2 weeks, people are, losing momentum and not able to sustain? And how do you think, our viewers should prepare for that and find something more sustainable?
Well, I think in order to maintain a behavioral change that's difficult in the first place, you have to like have some kind of intrinsic motivation. It has to come from a place within you that's pretty solid. Like, I really want this. Why do I want this? Why are we doing what we're doing? Right. A lot of the changes that people try to make are like, under the guise of like a health benefit, like the one I just discussed. Sugar and processed foods is like what I'm trying to cut out this year. But um, we kind of lose sight of why we're doing stuff when the reward system isn't being acted like. You don't really get a reward from suffering through not having sugar, right? Like it's only been like 7 days, and I'm in a lot of pain. I don't know why I'm doing it almost at this point. Everything looks appealing. Uh, all
So
the sugars.
how if the resolution is something that kind of denies something that was, traditionally a kind of immediate, short-term payoff reward, how do we get in touch with those long-term rewards and kind of access that and sort of feel that benefit or be conscious of it as we're going through this process?
Well, I'm a big advocate of creating mental blueprints, like for any kind of change. And that blueprint is like a part of me. I can access it who does he look like? Why do I want to be in this part of me? How do I feel when I'm in this part of me? It's like foresight towards that version of me. I can already tell how I'm going to feel. I could already tell how I like, I don't know, in my instance with what I'm trying to create, I can already see that I'm going to like the way I look more, because probably not going to be as puffy. I'm going to like, uh, when you eat well, you feel better, but it, it's something about discipline and respect, like self-respect, and this image that I have for myself that I need to keep connecting to. A lot of people don't create that blueprint like it's a mindfulness exercise. You sit there, you actually think about this version of yourself. You ask yourself, why am I doing this? You kind of play into that future version of yourself and see what it feels like. And what I like to do is I take something out of EMDR, actually. It's called bilateral stimulation. And essentially, when you're using bilateral stimulation, you're working through a memory network. And you can also use stimulation to grow a positive feeling or a part of you. In my opinion, and what I've seen happen with clients, and I don't know if like the Mayberger Institute would say do this with bilateral stimulation, but it's just something through experiential trials I found with my clients is like you can grow a positive sensation. You can grow a blueprint of a certain version of yourself that feels good and you can tap into that. And I think a lot of us like don't do that. We don't focus on growing this part of us that keeps us motivated, that aligns with that version of who we want to be. Where if we start to lose that like in what we're doing, we kind of just forget like why were we doing this? Like is it even that
Yeah.
important? Does it make
So
sense what I'm talking about? Like, do you understand what I'm saying?
I want to understand more like what do you mean by bilateral stimulation as a like practice?
Right.
What are you doing consciously to like, have that payoff in terms of increasing motivation?
So, so what I'm doing is I'm trying to grow a version, like this positive feeling inside of you when I'm using it in terms of creating a blueprint of who you want to be in the future. Um, it's just tapping right and left. You can use your feet, you can tap your feet right and left. It's kind of like a rhythm, like a, 1, 2, 1, 2. You can also tap your knees with your hands, just any kind of bilateral stimulation, meaning you're tapping on one side of your body and then you're tapping on the other. Um, and this is actually used in EMDR to process trauma, like if we're going down memory networks. They call them, I forgot what they're called. They're targets. They call them targets. You identify certain targets, but it's also used to kind of impose and replace negativity with positivity once you start doing this expansion work after you've cleared up the negativity. You can grow a sense of positivity and really let yourself have that and really um, create the blueprint of that positive experience within your body. It's a somatic experience just as much as it's a visual and a breathing, exercise. It's really cool.
Nice. Nice. Okay. And so that would be something in the moment that you could do if you're noticing that your willpower is kind of decreasing and you want to like pause and get back in touch with like just a more motivated sense of why you're going after the goals or the resolutions.
Right. Well, so I think that bilateral stimulation somehow, and it's just through my experience, I don't know what like experts would say, like EMDR experts would say about this, but it helps um, kind of solidify an expansion process for something positive as well. So when a client is feeling something positive, sometimes what I'll do is I'll tell them, hey, sit in this, and let's see if bilateral stimulation can help you grow this and just really let yourself have it, right? Like
Okay.
this isn't when I'm processing trauma or anything. And so if you're feeling motivated for change, right, and you're having this strength for it, you could potentially feel into that part of you that feels really like strong around this. Maybe do some bilateral stimulation and let that feeling like grow from head to toe and see if you can like kind of strengthen that neurologically.
Nice. Okay. Um, I want to get back to something that you said earlier and just, I don't know, take my own slant on it, which is this idea that, initially we've got this motivation and then, here you are only 7 days in and it's already starting to, be challenging and the rewards don't feel there. And what I want to look at is these kind of two parts of our brain that often compete in terms of their desires and wishes and goals. And one is the wizard brain, which
Mm.
is kind of what we associate with our thinking and our normal conversations. And the conversation we're having now is a wizard brain conversation. The thinking and the logic is wizard brain logic. Our
Right.
lizard brain is basically asleep, not paying attention during this conversation. And
No.
likewise, if we were thinking about resolutions and goals, it would be totally out to lunch, not bothering. It's too much cognitive nonsense in the future. The lizard brain is much more a here and now, immediate payoff, immediate pleasure kind of system, and that's what it's oriented towards. And its underlying mission is just, I want to survive long enough to be able to reproduce. And that might mean, getting some tribal security payoffs, getting some payoffs in terms of feeling these dopamine and serotonin rewards, but
Right.
things like, oh, I want to get good grades so I can go to grad school, or I want to, lose weight so that I can, feel better physically. That is too far in the future. It's too distant for the lizard brain to be attracted to it.
Right.
So, a lot of times when we're making these goals, it's our wizard brain using willpower. And willpower can ebb and flow with time and energy and motivation and emotions. The lizard brain's um, tool for getting what it wants is chemical drives. So if the lizard brain's like, I want ice cream, it'll
Hmm.
make it feel very urgent that we need to get this sugar or whatever it is that is kind of our addictive, immediate payoff pleasure thing. There's this strong triggered urge to make it happen. And when our willpower is strong, it can meet that. When we're tired at the end of the day, when we're just in a bit of a frustrated mood or a little distracted, it's much easier for the lizard brain to navigate towards getting its way. And these are certainly competing things.
Right.
Talking about diet or exercise, the lizard brain wants no part of it. It wants to get like here and now payoff. So sugar is a big thing. Using substances can be a big thing for a lizard brain that's had experience with that. Our wizard
Well,
brain will be like, no, I don't want to do that. But often it loses the battle.
well, also we live in a society that doesn't encourage like focus on the here and now. It's very much fast paced. It's dopamine hits in every way. You want food, order it online. You want entertainment, look at your phone. The lizard brain is probably enlarged more than it used to be like 20, 40 years for the average person, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's completely like a hijack of our system, the way that we're living our lives. So it's even harder, I'd say, for a lot of people to find intentionality from day to day, like in just everything they're doing. Even for me, it's like, I've been doing this for a long time and there's so much time in a day. Even if we're busy all the time, we're not very intentional with how we're being busy or what we're doing, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of just this reach of how can we make this the most pleasant for this moment? What do I need right now? Cup of coffee, like whatever it is. Um, and I think that that ties into this whole idea of holding a New Year's resolution. It's like, well, have you trained yourself to be intentional? Like the kind of hack I was talking about earlier about creating a blueprint, that's a very intentional process. And you have to like notice when you're slipping from that And you have to go to that blueprint. You have to go to that part of your psyche and like kind of activate that like intrinsic motivation. Athletes can do this. People do this to this day.
Yeah.
Very intentional.
And I know that brings this kind of larger point that I think is important with our resolutions is that this isn't merely just having the thought about what we want to do and getting out of the gate with it. We have to treat this as a campaign, and we want to have strategies that we've thought of up front about how to manage the resolution, the goals, whatever they are. They don't have to be New Year's resolutions, they could be goals anytime during the year. But we want to have a plan in place for when our willpower and motivation is waning. And typically, there's some elements to that plan. One is to be able to pause, collect ourselves, slow down, and get conscious of this being a significant moment in terms of that fork in the road of where we can either kind of strengthen our resolution and make a step towards it, or it's going to weaken because we're in that moment of doubt or hesitation. And a term that I like using for the kinds of things that we're going to bring to the table in those situations is anchors. Anchors, symbolically in this example, are meant to kind of keep our thinking, keep our behavior in a certain place. And anchors, as they apply to that, would be specific intentional thoughts that are reminders about why are we doing this in the first place, or what is the payoff going to be down the road, or what is that mental blueprint, like you said, that we have of ourselves that we want to be working towards,
Right.
or memories can be great anchors. Memories of when we felt on top of our game, we had positive experiences, we had the feeling that we want to have now when we're tackling these goals. And sometimes that could include like sensations. That bilateral stimulation can be a sensation that can help us to increase our motivation and get in touch with that energy. There's other memories that we might have of other experiences in the sensory world that are going to reliably bring us to that more positive state of mind that's going to help us increase motivation. So we want to have a toolkit that we've designed in our own sort of, personalized way for our own history and personality and temperament so that we're not just getting out of the gate with this idea and no plan, but we have a plan. And the plan might have components of, all right, I want to exercise at this amount of time, when and where, or I want to, reduce sugar or eat intentionally this way and that. But the plan also needs to have this second part of what am I doing when my motivation and my willpower are waning and when my lizard brain just doesn't feel like it and is kind of taking control of the reins, so to speak.
No, I like that. I like the idea that like it's almost like the scaffolding for a New Year's resolution. It's like, how are we going to create something that will sustain the foundation of what I'm trying to build? Like, what is the plan here? What are the blueprints? Like, how do I go back to my reason, my why, that feeling of intrinsic motivation? And for me, it's always tied to values, and I have to do if I really want to make a change in my life, I have to have like a mental image of who I'm going to be. I have to have this like planned out, and I have to understand I do have to prepare myself for a level of discomfort that is going to be like outside of the norm, right? Like, you know, skipping sugar for a day, that's fine. I mean, I noticed it right away. Skipping sugar for 7 days, it has been almost hellish. So, but I'm being kind about it too. Like I'm eating fruit and I'll have some honey with tea or something like that. Like that's part of the resolution. But, you know, the thing that keeps me tied to it is my image of who I want to be, what I'm going to feel like, who I'm going to look like, how I want to be in this world. For
Nice.
me, that connects me to it. I don't know if a lot of people hold that image strongly or tie emotion to it, or And another thing is, if you really want to, another hack that people can use to hold something up is the olfactory sense. Like if you tie something to smell, you really can quickly go to a certain place in your psyche. Like memories are accessed right away sometimes with just a smell,
Yeah.
nostalgia, all that. So I haven't found out how to do that yet, but I would imagine if you could find a way to connect, a New Year's resolution to a smell. So every time you're feeling, like you're losing it, and you smell something like, oh yeah, that's the person I want to be. Yeah, he's gonna smell like this or whatever, right?
So, as far as that goes with the sense of smell, I imagine if someone was to be initially thinking about their reasons for making these resolutions or goals and writing some strategies down, writing some key thoughts or things that they want to anchor into their consciousness, that when they came back to a similar kind of pause and reflection on these goals, if they were to light a scented candle or have that kind of scented oil as something intentionally in the space, even maybe going back to that place in their house or their room or whatever, and being able to like really gather themselves in that space, that the scent would help to bring back those previous like strong anchoring emotions, feelings, thoughts about why they wanted to do this in the first place.
Yeah, yeah, I think
So
it's yeah.
Um, so we're gonna in part two later on this week be talking in more detail about our personal resolutions and our joint resolution and how we're tackling that against the obstacles that we've been discussing today and the importance of having a comprehensive strategy. So I hope this has been helpful for the listeners. Any final thoughts you have, Andre, before we wrap up our podcast for the first one of the new year?
Uh, Good luck with your New Year's resolutions. I guess that would be it.
Nice. All right, here's our outro.
Therapy dudes, take away your stress, put you in a good mood. If you had them over, they would eat up all your food. It's time for therapy dudes. Therapy dudes, take away your stress, put you in a good mood. Listen to them anytime you're coming unglued. Time for